in. Do you want us to turn our cameras on or no?
It's up to you if you want it on. I can make sure you can.
No, that's okay. I don't need to have it on. I didn't know what the protocol was, so.
Oh, it doesn't make any difference if you want to.
All right, I'm good with having it off. Thanks.
Okay.
Well, Kay, it's 7:30. This is Linda Westergaard.
Okay.
If we could go ahead and begin. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the March 22nd City Council work session. We have 2 items to discuss today. Would be the fiscal year 2020 audit report and Bravo of Greater Des Moines. Previously, we had published that we would discuss the human rights ordinance amendment. That has been temporarily pulled from our agenda now while there's a little more work being done on it. So with that, I'll turn it over to our city manager, Scott Sanders. If you'd like to say a couple of words, and then is the audit report the first item, Kay?
Yes, it is. And James Remington will be presenting first.
Okay, great. I'll turn it over to Scott and then we'll go right to James.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. And so, yes, we do have just the 2 items. My apologies on the 3rd item. That was something that we had some miscommunication on the legal review of item 3 that was on the agenda. So we'll take care of that and bring that back when it's ready. But we do have the 2 presentations this morning. I appreciate Sally coming on and working with us on the schedules to make this happen. And then also Heidi with our auditing firm. So I'll turn it over to our finance department. I believe we have Assistant Finance Director James Remington on to start us out, maybe?
Yes, thanks, Scott. I believe Nick wanted to say a few words quickly.
Thanks, James. Nick Shaw, Finance Director. I wanted to first start out with basically giving James Remington him and his team on all the hard work that they did with Heidi and the RSM group in getting this audit completed. Again, this was a unmodified opinion that we received, and they'll kind of go into more details of that, but wanted to kind of call out the work of the Deputy Finance Director, James Remington, and his staff that worked through this. So thank you, James, for letting me talk.
Always happy to let you talk, Nick. All right.
I should be sharing my screen if everybody can see that.
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Thanks, Kay. I'm just going to go over the 4 files that council members should all have. The first is a report to City Council from the auditor. This sort of covers required communications on their behalf, as well as significant accounting estimates that go into the audit. The second is the comprehensive annual financial report itself, which includes the audited financial statements for fiscal 2020. Thirdly, we have the single audit compliance report. This covers our expenditures of federal grants and sort of the controls around those. And finally, will be the presentation that Robert and Heidi from RSM will be giving this morning and sort of covering in more detail those items that you have. With that, I'll hand it over to RSM, Heidi and Robert.
Thanks, James. This is Heidi Habkirk. I am an audit partner with RSM, and we are happy to be here with you today. I have Robert Kreiser, who is the manager on the audit, so with me this morning too. Robert, could you start sharing the presentation? As James said, we'll be going over the presentation this morning that has kind of a high-level summary of the 3 documents that you received. And so if there is anything that you have more detailed questions over, you would want to refer back to those more detailed documents. But we're also happy to take any questions that you have this morning also, either throughout the presentation or at the end. We'll also open it up. So this morning, our agenda is we're going to cover some auditor communications, talk through some summarized June 30th, 2020 financial performance, and then provide a summary of the single audit that was performed. So first, I'm going to talk about the auditor communications with the city officials. This is a summary of that document called Report to the Council. So if you want to see more details, there would be more in that PDF that James provided. The first is to let you know our responsibility as auditors, and we come in and audit the city under 3 sets of standards every year. The first set is the auditing standards generally accepted in the United States, and this tells you whether or not your financial statements themselves are materially correct. The city received an unmodified opinion over the financial statements this year. That's the best opinion you can receive. And what that tells you as council is that there are no material errors within the financial statements based on our audit. The second set of standards is the government auditing standards. This is where we review your internal controls and compliance related to those financial statements. And then we also conduct an audit under the Single Audit Act. And that's where we perform audit procedures over your federal grants and awards. And we'll go over the results of those 2 standards a little later in the presentation. In the current year, there were no significant new accounting standards that was implemented. So the financial statements compared to last year, there's no change in how the city had to account for anything. The GASB, which is the accounting standards that the city follows, they did issue a new standard this year that allowed a kind of a COVID relief in that delaying those standards that were outstanding and required to be originally implemented during fiscal year 2020, and they extended them by a year. So the city did take advantage of that. There were no audit.
Heidi.
Oh, yeah.
Heidi, can you
Yes.
have Robert share his full screen? He's sharing with his notes. So,
Oh, okay.
okay, thank you.
Yep.
I guess I don't know what you guys are seeing. What you guys are seeing where it shows like the next slide and everything. Hold on.
Yes.
I will change that. Let's go with this. Really quick.
No, we see the financial statements.
Yep,
PDF.
hold on. Yep, trying to get back to it. Is that?
There we go. Yep, that's
Perfect. Thank you. Sorry for the
Sorry about that.
interruption.
That's okay. Feel free to interrupt with any questions also. There were no audit adjustments in the current year. So those trial balances that we received from management, we did not propose any changes to those. So what that means to you as council is that the unaudited numbers are the same that you'll see in the audited financial statements. There was one uncorrected misstatement in the current year, and that related to the Municipal Housing Authority Fund. And this was due to our testing of accounts payable. We did find an error related to cutoff for an actual invoice, which the Housing Authority did post that adjustment. But then as part of our sampling, we have to look at if we found an error related to cutoff, and project that to the overall fund and consider that as an uncorrected misstatement, or if it would be material. So there was a projection of that error that we found through our testing, but both management and ourselves as the auditors felt that it was not material to the financial statements and that any errors would be corrected in the future years. So that is reported within that report in a little bit more detail. There are management judgments and accounting estimates within the financial statements, as there are each year. As part of our audit process, we do audit each of those significant estimates. We either develop our own estimate along with testing management's underlying information that's used to establish their estimate. And through our testing this year, we found that all of the estimates were reasonable and had no concerns over any of those. And then as you can see from the final 4 items, we had no disagreements with management. We're not aware of any consultations with other accountants. We had no significant issues that were discussed with management, nor did we encounter any difficulties performing the audit this year. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Robert, and he's going to cover some financial performance results.
Thanks, Heidi. Before I jump into these slides, I do just want to also echo what Nick said to start. I just want to thank James and Tim and their team for all the hard work throughout the process. As everyone knows, this has been a very interesting last 12 months. So for all the hard work that they did and their team to be able to get this audit done in a remote setting just needs to be commended. So I just wanted to take a second to do that, and I really appreciated all their hard work and cooperation throughout the process. So jumping in here, just to some of these financial slides. This first one here is just the governmental funds revenue. So the revenue for the governmental funds did increase about 34.9 million in 2020, which is about a 10.9% increase. As you can see here on the slide, the majority of that is due to taxes, with that being the change from the local option sales tax receipts of approximately $42 million. The next slide here is the expenditures by function of all the governmental funds. Expenditures also increased about 58.5 million, or 15.5%. And again, as you can see here, the main change is the debt service expenditures. The 2011 A bonds as well as the 2012 A and B bonds were refunded in 2020. While there were no significant refundings in 2019, which led to that significant change there. The next slide is the general fund unrestricted fund balance in days. This did decrease about 7 days in 2020, but as you can see here, kind of with the trends, 2019 was kind of a significant outlier to where it has been over the past 5 years. It's important to note also that the city is significantly over the GFOA benchmark of 60 days. My last financial slide here is operating income excluding depreciation for the enterprise funds. In total, the enterprise funds increased 0.75 million. And that is some of the big changes here, as you can see on the yellow bar here, which is the sewer system, decreased about 4.3 million, or 32.5%, with those main changes coming from a $1.9 million increase in personnel services and a $1.1 million increase in contractual services. Stormwater, on the other hand, increased. The green bar, or the third bar from the left here, increased about 1.3 million. The main change there was a $1.7 million increase in charges for services, which was about a 6.6 increase in charges for services, mainly due to the rate increase in 2020 of 6%. And then lastly, solid waste, or the furthest bar to the right, increased about 3.1 million. And this was mainly due to a $2.8 million decrease in contractual services, which was a 34.5% decrease in contractual services for solid waste. Those are the financial statement slides. I guess before Heidi jumps back into the compliance report, I can take a second to see if anyone has any specific questions about the financial statement slides. And if not, I'll turn it back over to Heidi to talk about our compliance reporting.
All right, thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
So the last piece that we'll discuss this morning is the compliance reporting. I do want to make a comment because if you do look at the dates, the compliance piece, or the single audit piece of the audit, was done a little bit later this year. And as I indicated earlier, we ran into no issues in regards to the city itself. And just want to let you know that that is something that was common for all entities. With the additional recovery monies, the CARES Act money that was provided to various entities, the federal agencies needed a little bit more time to provide the guidance for us auditors to audit against. So we were waiting for that in order to complete our audit this year. That wasn't released until right before the end of December. So that's why that date's a little bit later this year. So I did want to point that out, that it didn't have anything to do with the city itself. It was waiting on the federal agencies to provide us that guidance. As I mentioned earlier, the government auditing standards is where we look at your internal controls over the financial statements along with compliance related to the financial statements themselves. In the current year, we reported no deficiencies or findings related to the financial statements, and there were also none reported in the prior year. For the single audit itself, that's where we look at those federal dollars that you receive and expend. In the current year, we had one major program. So that's where we get into the details of one of the major federal programs and test various compliance requirements that the agency asks us to do. And then we provide an opinion over that program. In the current year, it was the Continuum of Care program, and that did receive an unmodified or clean opinion. And along with that unmodified opinion, we also had no internal control deficiencies, nor did we have any instances of non-compliance related to the grant. So very clean audit for this side, also related to the programs and internal controls. That's all we have for our formal presentation today. We would open it up for any questions that you would have related to anything that we covered in the presentation, or anything that we didn't cover in the presentation that you have questions over.
This is Linda Westergaard, and thank you for the presentation. If there are any questions, Kay, I can't tell if anybody has questions or not. So if they're not, we can move on to the Bravo of Greater Des Moines update. If that's the end of the presentation.
Mayor Pro Tem, if this is Scott, is it all right if I make a couple more comments? Linda, can you hear me all right? Kay, am I coming through?
Yeah, you are.
got
I'm
you.
not sure. Just go ahead.
So council members, I want to make sure that everyone understands that the clean audit is a conclusion of an awful lot of work that goes well beyond just the audit process itself. We work with RSM to make sure we understand what the new standards are for accounting each year. And we do have some pretty significant changes that have to be made throughout our accounting system as we do refinancings with the bonds that you heard about. We were able to introduce the sales tax as a new revenue source and all the expenditures that come with that. And so I want to also send out an appreciation to RSM for the guidance that they provide as well. It's not all after the fact. A lot of times it's actually planning to understand how we should best account for the literally hundreds of millions of dollars of funds that need to flow through the city's accounting system. So the work that RSM does with our accounting staff is so crucial in that. And it does even go broader than that, as we have the departments that are responsible for their individual accounting at the department level. So again, I don't want to understate the importance that behind the scenes, this type of paying attention to detail is occurring throughout the organization. What it does is it leads to trust in that we not only know what we're doing, but can show in a transparent way that our finances are in a very strong position. And so Nick's team continues to demonstrate that. It gives the council hopefully an incredible amount of comfort that work is being done and being done properly, and gives the council and the community capacity to do more with our funds as we stretch those funds further into services into our community. So it's just how everything links together, and the amount of work and paying attention to detail is so crucial that allows us to get everything else done that we need to at the city. So again, kudos to the entire financing team to give us that capacity and give us the ability to move forward with additional services throughout the community. I'll send it back at this point to our second item, which is Bravo's presentation. And Sally, again, thanks for joining us.
Good morning,
Thank you,
everyone.
Scott.
Thanks.
Are you ready for me to dive in?
Yes, please do, Sally. Thank you.
All right. Well, I'm going to try to share my screen. I feel like after all this time, I should be better at that. So if I get it wrong or you're not seeing my presentation, please let me know. Can you all see that? Just one big old slide?
Yes, ma'am.
Great. Well, we're off to a good start already. Just a quick thank you for the opportunity to present here this morning. I know you all are busy and have big things to address and discuss, but I'm really proud of what Bravo's been able to do over the last year and want to take a few minutes to share some of our wins and some of the challenges, frankly, that remain for our arts and culture sector in Des Moines. A special thank you, of course, to Connie Bozen, who represents the city of Des Moines on the Bravo board. She is attentive and helps ask great questions and is consistently making sure we're doing our best work. So we appreciate her participation. Just a quick reminder, because I know all of you don't fit in this work every day. Bravo was formed in 2004, and our role primarily was to serve as a centralized grant funder to the arts, culture, and heritage community. We are able to leverage the resources of the region to make stronger and higher impact investments than if each city were doing their own thing. We remain 99% funded with hotel motel taxes from 17 local government partners, and we are proud to act as a steward for those public funds. We do believe that our vision is broader than just as an investor. Our most effective tool by far is our competitive grant making programs. That's what we're best known for, and I'm proud to say that we've invested more than $40 million over the last 15 years. But the role that we're also leaning into is providing leadership on arts and culture issues and opportunities beyond grant making. There are efforts and initiatives that a single grant to a single organization can't achieve. And so Bravo is making investments in projects and programs that will further align arts and culture with other regional priorities. Excuse me. One of the key ways that we're leading beyond grant making right now is by being a voice for arts and culture in the region as the sector weathers the pandemic. Individual organizations have clearly been impacted, but the view of the sector overall is really stunning. And we worked with Flynn Wright to put together this campaign, Let's Hear It for the Arts, to share the impact and advocate with a consistent voice. It's particularly important that we do this and that we run this campaign because arts and culture are truly essential to our region. More than 70 nonprofit organizations are driving an incredible quality of life for sure, but also the economic impact is substantial. These data are a little bit old. We were supposed to run another economic impact study in 2020, which for obvious reasons didn't happen. But even from these data that you're seeing here, annually, the organizations Bravo supports are driving $185 million in economic impact, employing more than 5,500 full-time equivalent jobs. And we love that bottom statistic when we speak with our 2080 partners, generating almost $17 million annually in government revenue. So these organizations are critically important, not just to robust cultural experiences we can offer to residents and visitors, but also to our region's economy. Unfortunately, no sector has been hit harder by the pandemic than leisure and hospitality, which includes arts and cultural venues and experiences. You're seeing here, these were initial numbers, February through April of 2020, but some of these remain for our cultural sector as they struggle to come back online. Many of these numbers have not bounced back yet. You can see from this slide the financial impact to the organizations, more than $40 million. These are data from September. As the pandemic continues, I'm sure these numbers continue to rack up. 97% of the organizations in our state had to cancel events. 63% had to modify their operating status, meaning either had to go virtual, had to go dark, had to come up with some hybrid. And unfortunately, 3.5 million people didn't get to participate in these things. The chart on the right shows you what the individual organizations, how they ranked the impact on their organization financially, and 57% responded extremely severe. The data point you're not seeing there is that 8% also said they did not think they were going to make it through the pandemic. And when you think about that in terms of central Iowa numbers, those 70 organizations I talked about, that's 6, 7, 8 organizations that are potentially not going to make it through. And I don't know which ones we can afford to live without. So these are really dire statistics, unfortunately. It's also interesting to note that not every organization may come back in the same way. The organizations that have outdoor spaces might come back sooner as people feel comfortable being outside. But enclosed spaces with limited visitor movement or high touch experiences may struggle to regain their typical visitor volume as people are adjusting to new normals. And then experiences that host primarily older audiences may have a different experience. It will be interesting to see if, because older populations are vaccinated, they feel more comfortable coming back. It's possible that they may say they're not going to be comfortable coming back, which is going to dramatically change the experience for some of those venues that serve that demographic. I want to be clear that despite the challenges, which have been substantial, the organizations serving our community have been incredible. They've been creative and resilient and have provided new opportunities for our community to engage. These organizations did not just shut down for the pandemic. They found new ways. What you're seeing here is a photo of the community playhouse, the Des Moines Community Playhouse, doing drive-in live theater. If you didn't have a chance to see it, it was outstanding. It was a tremendous opportunity. They broadcast everything through FM radios, going back old school, and it was just terrific. What you see here is some work that Art Force Iowa did. Art Force Iowa serves some of our community's most vulnerable young people, many of whom don't have access to the internet or access to a computer. So while they did some virtual art meetups, they also created those kits and took individual kits out to the young people that were serving their, that participate in their programs, so that those young people would have the opportunity to still engage and create through the pandemic. City Voices is a terrific organization that provides voice lessons to young people that might not be able to afford, high school students that might not be able to afford voice lessons, but that do want to pursue voice in college, and private lessons is a critical part of that. They, these seniors, right, graduating from high school, they didn't get to do their senior recitals, this culmination of all their hard work. So City Voices offered virtual recitals presented over Facebook and had great success recognizing the hard work of those students. And then this is a picture of the Des Moines Symphony, which has been wildly successful and incredibly thoughtful with their approach to presenting live streaming concerts. Can't get a whole symphony in one room right now, but they've been incredibly creative, and the caliber of the broadcasts that they're putting out are outstanding. So those are just some of the examples of some of the organizations and how they have pivoted. Bravo also responded in the best ways we could. You can see from this slide that our hotel motel revenue for FY20 was down 20% from budget. But despite that, we still paid 100% of our grant cycle 20 grant commitments. We did not have to pull any money back. We were able to pay every grant we had committed to. We also advanced some of our quarterly payments. We typically do our payments quarterly, and we said to our cultural partners, if you need this money now, you can have it now. And that made a big difference, as many of them, the faucet literally turned off for earned revenue. So our contributed revenue was incredibly important. We were also able to still run our capital campaign and project grant cycle and our public art grant cycle in 2020, which demonstrated our broad commitment to not just the organizations that we support, but also the other programs and the broad needs of the sector. Our FY21 revenue budget is about $2.5 million. That's almost exactly 50% of our FY20 budget. Obviously, it's more than that of what we actually received. But we are clearly being conservative. As I said, we rely 99% on hotel motel taxes, and nobody has a crystal ball for when that's going to return. So Unfortunately, with that budget, we will not be able to run our public art grant cycle this year, but we are going to run our capital project grant. We are mandated with our 2080 to run that program, so we will execute that program as required. There just won't be additional funding for that. Over the last couple of years, we've put additional funding in that pool, and we won't be able to do that. We did secure a first round PPP loan for Bravo and have already applied for our second round. We haven't heard back, but in addition to that, we did put our staff on partial furlough over the summer and unfortunately had to execute a reduction in force. So Bravo is now a staff of 2 doing the work for our community. We also have updated our community investment programs in order to respond to the changing way our revenue is coming in. We're shifting from, in the past, we have made award decisions based on projections, and we have shifted that to make award decisions based on actual revenue received, which has changed our process. It's probably a little more internal than anything, but has changed our process. And we also are really concentrating on investing as much as we can while maintaining Bravo's stability and the stability of our investments in the cultural partners we support. It's a lot of balancing, which is what everyone's doing. And I think that we've executed it. Hopefully we've executed it well. Hopefully you all saw last week, we announced our largest grant cycle ever, which I think was unexpected in the pandemic, but our board made a strong commitment to pushing out as much as we possibly could, given that many of our organizations are still in crisis. So last week, we announced an award cycle of $2.25 million, which is about $450,000 more than we've ever put out in a 6-month period. We're very proud of the ability to be able to do that and to be able to say that since January of 2020, on behalf of the city partners that we serve, Bravo has invested more than $6.3 million in arts and culture, which I know has been a lifesaver for the organizations that we all treasure, that we all treasure and value. So as far as next steps, part of the reason we produced this campaign was because we wanted a consistent set of messages and a consistent call to action that everyone can speak, because arts and culture are essential to every priority in our community. It's not just a nice to have amenity. Everything we want to advance, from jobs to education, from talent attraction, tourism, everything we want to do is tied to the arts. So we put together these 5 bullet points as far as a call to action, hoping that we can speak with one voice and ensure that arts and culture are included in every conversation about how our community responds and comes back. I'm happy to take any questions if there are any from everyone this morning.
Linda, or could I just want to thank Sally and Amy, because the team of 2, for the work they've done and keeping this thing going and making sure that we get the money out to everyone. I sit on the grant committee, and when you read the applications, the work they do is very crucial and very important to our community. So I appreciate the work that has been done to keep things moving.
Thank you, Connie. Thanks for.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Sally.
No, you're fine, Linda. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally. That was really a very nice presentation. I like the promotion that you're doing. I love the colors, and it just works out really well. So thank you. Thank you for all that you do in our community. And thanks to Connie Bozen for sitting on that board. So we appreciate the work that everyone's doing. And I don't know if there are any other questions.
Yes,
No.
Linda, Josh has one.
Okay, great.
Yeah, thanks so much for the presentation, and particularly the emphasis on continuity and helping our arts and culture organizations make it through the pandemic. I guess the question I have, because Bravo's dependent on the hotel motel, and we don't have a sense of exactly how the recovery of the hospitality industry looks, what what is your sense going forward in terms of how you'll cope with that, and what does that mean for the next grant cycle and maybe the one after that? What kind of contingency plans and what kind of scenarios are you gaming out?
Yeah, that's a great question, Josh. And of course, that crystal ball is, I wish that we had all gotten one of those over the holidays. We don't have solid projections on hotel motel revenues and when those are going to bounce back and at what level they're going to bounce back. We as a board made a decision to invest as much as we had. And that's a significant shift. Like I said, it's a little bit internal. We used to make investments based on projections and focused on stability so that over a 4-quarter period, organizations could expect a similar investment from Bravo. We've been very clear with our cultural partners and hopefully with the communities that we support that that's not feasible at this point. We've made a strategic decision to put out the dollars we have, but that means we can't invest until we have that money. So this cycle was substantial, as I said, intending to put the money to work at this time when these organizations are many still in crisis. Our next cycle will not be, even with our best case projections, our next cycle will be nothing close to this. And we are doing our best to navigate that with our partners and be clear about our communication. But I think like the cities, we wait to hear what the hotel motel tax revenue is going to be. So as far as gaming out scenarios, we're working with the Convention and Visitors Bureau, we're tracking the reports, but it's difficult to anticipate. So we've got a couple of scenarios that we're running, and our budget will continue to be trim for the next year and a half is my bet.
Thank you, Sally.
Thanks again for the opportunity to present, and truly thank you for your continued support. This is incredibly important for the region, and I'm very grateful for the work that we get to do on behalf of the local government partners that we serve. So thank you.
Thank you, Sally. With that, that will conclude our council work session for this morning. I'll turn it over to Scott Sanders if he has a few parting remarks, and then we'll see everyone at 4:30 for our city council meeting. Scott?
No, I think you've actually covered it, Mayor Pro Tem. So we do not have a closed session. So yes, 4:30 this afternoon, we'll have our regular council meeting. Nothing
Great.
more.
Great. If you go out, take your umbrella today, and we'll see everyone at 4:30. Thank you.